Yes.
Yes.
Which leads me directly into the topic of the day, which is, today we're launching the 6th month, if you count Ego, Instinct, and Evolution, the 5th official month of Consciousness Boot Camp, with a talk on becoming mutually supportive. And that is the kind of world that I'd like to be launching today, if I had it in my power, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. What is so darn hard about being mutually supportive? The first thing, of course, is that we have to understand what it means. And I would like to speak to that for a moment. And then we need to look at the obstacles. And of course, this is only talk 1, so I will be giving another talk on becoming mutually supportive in much more detail next time. And by the way, we have a new friend in the Netherlands who's watching all of these videos. So we're going to say hello to her when she watches. The way I define mutual support, or it was defined for me by the consciousness that guides me, is that we support the whole and the whole supports us. And in a way that seems so simple and so obvious, doesn't it? And yet it is truly not the way we are programmed and the way that we are trained. It flies in the face of the 4 most important words in the English language, which are, but what about me? And that's kind of the essence of the problem, isn't it? It's like we go towards mutual support, and our first visceral reaction is fear, because what's going to happen to me? And we all have that. It's natural. You know, we're in bodies, our bodies feel fear. We're chemistry experiments. And we need to not be too critical of ourselves for going there, and for the crazy thinking that goes along with that. But just as we've been doing through our entire program, we're really intending, at the very least intending, to overcome and transcend the limitations of our initial reactivity. So I'm going to be speaking about that little issue about what about me in a moment. But I also want to say that this goes against what we have learned is better than what about me, which is I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine. And that's not mutual support either. That means I'm going to guarantee the what about me by guaranteeing your what about you. And that's when we're doing well. You know, we're bartering, you know. Yeah, it's like, you know, if you take out the garbage, I'll do the dishes. And that's a happy family. And what's wrong with that? Have you read the book? Oh, good. Well, what's wrong with that, obviously, is there is no way to equate. There is no way. It leaves us all very vulnerable. It's like, well, what is the value of what I have to offer? What is the value of what you have to offer? Well, it took me 32 seconds longer to wash the dishes than it took you to dry them. And the trash and this, you know, that was easy. Yeah, but this is disgusting. Well, so this is more disgusting. So that should equal out the, you know, yeah, but if you looked at these plates after the kids have gotten finished eating, you would realize how disgusting this is. And, you know, and then we're going back and forth, comparing, contrasting, arguing, bickering, you know. Yeah, you owe me. You owe me. And then what happens if, God forbid, someone can't do their job? Well, it's over, Buster. You don't take out the trash, those dishes aren't getting washed. You know, I mean, when you really think about it, it's kind of insane. There's something that happened in the world of finance many, many hundreds of years ago when we moved over from barter to money. And money has been called the universal commodity. Because it used to be, I would exchange I'm a cobbler or a shoemaker. I'm going to exchange shoes for corn. But supposing I don't need corn, I need vegetables, but the person who has vegetables doesn't need shoes. Right. Supposing the person with the vegetables needs corn. Life gets so complicated when you're trying to exchange. Try to go on a barter system. Think about every day, how could you get your needs met? You go into the drugstore and you would have to find somebody who manufactures dental floss who happens to need swimming lessons. Right there on the spot, in the moment. Meanwhile, your teeth rot, and you lose them completely because you never did make that connection, because that person who needs it is on the other side of the world. It's ludicrous, isn't it? We couldn't survive, and so we came up with the universal commodity, which is money. And it used to be gold, or it would be silver, or something that everybody recognized the value. And so this gave them the power to go out and buy what they wanted, and that was a tremendous freedom for everybody to be able to do that, because we had currency. And if you think about that, then you realize how the exchange between people is very primitive. And in the real world, it doesn't work very well. So if you think about it from that practical perspective, then you get that this idea of we support the whole and the whole supports us is actually grounded in our experience in real life every time we go to the store or we go to work. I mean, can you imagine if you went to work and at the end of the week you were paid in shoes, brassieres, nail polish, basketballs, and, I don't know,
swimming lessons.
Swimming lessons, right. Tickets to the football game.
Right.
And yet that's the way we are still doing it in our personal relationships. So the concept is I support the whole, and the whole supports me. I make my contribution to the whole, and then I receive something in return. Let's say you're working for the Ford Motor Company. You are not, we think that we're working for the department that hired us, but actually we're working for the Ford Motor Company. If the company goes out of business, it doesn't matter how great a typist I am, I'm out of a job. I am working for the whole of the company, because if the company doesn't survive, I don't have anything. And yet, even in such an obvious situation, is that the way people think? Very rarely. First of all, we're in there working for ourselves to get the money to pay our bills and to pay for our family. So that's number one. At best, we're working for our department and our supervisor and our friends. And it's very rare that people have any feeling of relationship to the company they're working for. And I'm not blaming the workers for that. It's, often the company has no feeling of relationship to the people that they're hiring. And often when people do talk about, well, I'm working for the school system. No, I'm not working for the school system, I'm working for the kids. We're very alienated, typically, from the whole for which we are, in fact, working. And yet, at the end of the day, it's Ford Motor Company that gives us the check, not Rita, my supervisor in the typing pool. Because the whole supports me, or doesn't support me very well. Now, the people who are running the corporations are not thinking that they're working for the whole either. Many of them are thinking about, oh, I'm a stockholder, I am a CEO. He's working for himself. He's trying to make a name for himself so he can go get a job at a better place and doesn't care what happens in the meantime. Or he does care about what happens because he wants to go get a better job at a different place. Or he's working for his reputation. Or he's working for the profits of the company, and he forgets that the person in the typing pool is actually even in the company. That person doesn't even exist. Who is thinking about the whole? Very few. I mean, it happens. But very few. Unless you're paid to think about the whole, you don't. You know, the people who say, well, I'm thinking about the company because I'm thinking about the profitability. Yeah. Are they thinking about the company, or are they only thinking about the aspect of the company called profitability? Are they thinking about the health of the people who are working there? I don't think so. Because then they would have to take that into consideration when they were looking at the profitability. We have all been victims of that mentality, because we've all been in organizations where people were thinking of some slice of the organization as being what they were working for. Okay, let's say now people in the school system, let's say you're given some kind of standards that you have to meet because somebody has gotten an idea that that's the way that the school is going to be run, and they don't really care what happens to the teachers, because now they have a new idea. But this is going to work. They may or may not even be thinking about the kids. They may be thinking about federal money. I mean, there are so many places where we break apart. How many of us think about the whole? And it starts at home. The child wants to eat. The hell with mommy. I'm hungry. Mommy wants a break when daddy comes home. To hell with daddy. Daddy wants to read the newspaper and drink a beer. To hell with everybody.
That's a happy family.
Exactly. And this is considered normal. You know, this is expected. And I want the house clean, so I want the housekeeper to be here at 8 and finish at 4, so my house is clean before I get home. To hell with her that her child has an emergency. And it goes on and on. We need the money. We've got the mortgage to pay. To hell with your employer who's is in a crunch and can't get the cash together. I mean, it just goes on. It ripples out, doesn't it? We don't see ourselves as a whole organism. We see ourselves as units, very small, starting with ourselves. Sometimes we include one other person. Occasionally more than that. Very often the unit that we're talking about is mommy and Buster, the child, and then daddy comes home. The interloper, not even part of the family. So it starts at home. Our fragmented thinking starts at home. We are not geared to consider the group. It's not our fault. Our parents didn't have it either. No, nobody thinks this way. And then what's worse is you'll have some principal saying, we need to think, PS 132, yay, PS 132, junior high school, let's all go out there for the football team. You know what I mean? And they try to rally people around the collective, right? Or you're working for Ford, and they'll send out flyers about morale. Or they'll come out and they'll tell you that we should all, you know, when it comes to the union contract, that you should be thinking about us. But what they don't mean think about the whole, they mean thinking about them. So we have a lot of make-believe wholes. Think of the team. Think of the team. Think of the team. And sometimes what happens is when that's kind of pushed, like when the kids is in the little league or the basketball game. Think about the team. Then what happens to the kid? Oh, you failed. Oh, you have 102 fever? You should be playing today anyway. You're our best pitcher. Think of the team. Well, no wonder we don't want to be mutually supportive, because our experience of that is forget yourself, go think of the team. Boing. You know, who wants that? Or, it's okay, Daddy did yell at you for 20 minutes and hit you, but Daddy's really tired. You know, he really works hard for us, so just grin and bear it. That's the way we're trained to think of the team. So we feel like if we are not fighting for ourselves, we're not going to be taken care of. So either we're not trained to think of the whole at all, or when we're presented with think of the whole, it's like, okay, the workers, you have to keep taking cuts in pay in order to keep the company going, but the CEO is going to have $250,000 worth of bonuses. Where's the team? What happened to that team? Isn't this reality? Isn't this the world we live in? So we've got a bad taste in our mouth from this thinking of the team business. Plus we get to be the disappointment if we're the one at Little League who, God forbid, is the one who gets struck out last. And then, oh, the team is so disappointed because of what you did. Or you don't even get to be invited on the team because you're too short. Or too weak, or not smart enough, or whatever. So nobody has learned a thing about mutual support. Because first we have to think of the whole, and we have to realize what the whole is. And the whole is everything and everybody. And that's threatening, because that means that we have to think about something other than ourselves. But what about me? So we're back to those famous 4 words. So let's say I need a pair of shoes and I see it on sale at Walmart, or I don't know if they have sneakers at Walmart, but wherever. Okay, we see it on sale and I say, oh my God, I feel so blessed. I got these shoes for $7. That's really great. I'm not saying, oh, the reason I got those shoes for $7 is because somebody got a cut and pay. The people in Bangladesh have been paid 2 cents an hour. And so on, and Walmart is trying to cut the throat of Kmart, and then as soon as they do, then 20,000 people are going to be laid off. All I think of is, I got a bargain. I do it. I don't even know how many people's lives are involved with everything that I do. It's absolutely awful. I mean, awful in every sense. I am full of awe when I think of all of the people whose efforts went into me getting that shoe. Who grew the rubber? You know, who sewed it? Who shipped it? Who invoiced? Who created the warehouse? Who sold it to me? Who their parents were so that they were even born? How they got here from Korea? Who was the captain of the boat who brought the grandparents over? All of the people whose efforts came together to get that one shoe at $7. I'm in awe. I can't even take it in about what the whole is. And it's awful in the other sense of, oh my God, do I have to think about all of them? I can't even keep track of myself. So it's easy to say, sure, I think of the whole, I support the whole supports me. Sure, sounds great. But try to do it. But try to live without it. Now, here's something I want to take the next step, because we have a formula, if there is something called anything like a formula in the stream. We have some tools. And our tool is, for Platform 4, I ask, what is for the highest good of all, including me? And then I ask God, because I can't, for the heck of me, figure out what really is for the highest good of all. I don't know who all is, and I don't know what the highest good is. And there's that niggling thing of the highest good. Oh, well, what does that mean? Well, I think that you should pay the most that I can possibly extort from you, because that's going to get me the new car that I desperately need. And that must be the right price. Well, I think that I should pay the least, because then I can have some money left over so that I can buy the new car that I so desperately need. So what do we got here? We have competing needs. And from our perspective, our needs are clearly more important. I mean, but you don't understand. I really need this. Haven't you ever had that thought? You know, I'm going out bidding on a job against somebody else, and you say, but you don't get it. I really need this job. Yeah. Their reasons for needing the job are bogus. My needs. I've got the real needs. They have the bogus needs. I should be the keynote speaker at that conference because it fits my agenda. I'm an important person. Don't you know that? The fact that I'm irrelevant to the entire topic of the conference should have nothing to do with that issue. Or the fact that the founder of the organization is planning on speaking instead and has put his lifeblood into it is irrelevant. I should speak. God has designated me as the keynote speaker. Don't you know that? So if we could even think about everybody who's involved in every decision that we make, which we can't, and if we actually trusted other people to think about the same things, which we don't, we'd still have to determine what the highest good is, which we don't know. When we go into a situation, we think that whatever we need is the highest good, don't we? I mean, really. This store must succeed because that's my retirement that just got piddled away. And my child needs shoes from Bangladesh that I can get at Walmart for $7. Obviously. And all these people at the store need jobs. It must be for the highest good that the store exists. I've determined that. I know. Me. I. And then the universe just goes swoop, and you're like wiped out. You know, there's a recession you didn't plan on. You know, and suddenly you're going down fast, and you're saying, whose idea was this anyway? And how am I supposed to feel that this is for my highest good? The housing crisis comes along, and and I love this, each one of us who was in the real estate market before the housing crash was watching our money mount. Oh yes, get into real estate, watch that money mount, and leveraging, and you know, and I started with $20,000, but 2 years later I have $250,000. That's my retirement. Gone. I lost my money. It wasn't even my money to start with. You know, how many people took money from one house, put it into the next, and never earned it? Didn't do a goddamn thing to earn that money, but then they say, I lost all my money. I did. I lost all my money. How did I get onto that topic? I think I was talking about the highest good. And how are we supposed to feel that that's in our highest good? You know, when we are now in our late 60s and have no savings, which we thought we had because we had money in real estate, which doesn't exist anymore. Or we had money in the stock market and it disappeared, or something. You know, it's really hard to sit there and say there's anything in the universe that is for our highest good, because when things work out, we very rarely take a moment to notice. It's only the things we don't like that we tend to really get carried away about. So who's going to determine what that highest good is when we're always looking at it from our perspective? And can you blame somebody? You know, here's a person who's worked hard all their life. Suddenly their pension was wiped out in the stock market and by some foolish investment or whatever it is that happened around their pension. They can't afford to go to the dentist. They're in pain, and you're going to say, well, this is for your highest good. Don't worry. It's for your highest good. You know? It's like, oh, really? I thought eating was for my highest good. I can't eat. It's painful. A lot of things in life are really painful. So we have very little trust that things are going to work out for our highest good. And so we're always watching vigilantly. So what are you bothering me with this mutual support nonsense? You just made a great case for why we really can't do it. I don't want to have to think about the peasant in Thailand. I really don't. I have enough of my own problems. I can't pay my own bills. I don't want to have to think about the highest good because it may give me a toothache. You know, I don't even want to know. Just leave me alone. Let me just go back to thinking in my old way. Maybe I'll barter with you. Yeah. For sex. Oh, she said it. I didn't. Yeah. So is there any reason that we should actually try to do this platform? Other than that we're trying to follow the curriculum of Consciousness Boot Camp? Is anybody convinced? It's daunting, isn't it? When you really, really, really think about it, it's very daunting. So what do? We say, whatever, God, you figure it out. So now, some of us have a God, some of us don't use the word God, the source, higher intelligence, whatever it is. This is where we have to take the leap of faith. Yeah. We have to believe. I mean, if we want to practice the platform. I'm not saying you have to believe this. You can do anything you want. You can stay bartering for the rest of your life or be completely self-centered, which is the way it is, and that's the world that we have already. Oh, yes, may I say something about that? Does anybody like the way the world is the way it is? With everybody thinking only of themselves? Or if you're lucky, they'll think about their own little family? Oh, yeah, we were people with real sense of, it was our tribe. You know what I mean? We really have a sense of collective. So it's our family. It's really important to us. Or our nationality. Oh, yeah. If it's not good for America, that's it. Or our religion, or our race, or blah, 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 or our gender. I mean, haven't we all lived in this world? Does anybody want to stay there? I don't think so, or you wouldn't be in this room. I mean, isn't it kind of nasty? Don't you feel unsafe? Dog, that's right. Don't you feel like nobody really gives a damn about you except the people who's hostage? You're a hostage? You know, the ones that you're bartering with? Oh, yeah. These people really care about me because if I break my back and I'm in the hospital, they're not going to have a job. So I've got a whole bunch of people who really care about me. I'm your counselor. You want me alive. I mean, once I'm in a coma, your passion for me would definitely diminish. I mean, don't kid yourself. Oh, don't worry, Beth, we'll never desert you. Sure. I can't produce anymore? anything, then I become an obligation. E. And so then we have to face that specter, the people who depend on us. Someday we might no longer be necessary to them. There's no barter anymore. And we can be thrown in the trash heap. And when they're no longer producing for us, who wants them hanging on? Haven't you lived a little too long, Mom? Grandma, great-grandma? It's a great world, isn't it? Doesn't it feel really secure? Oh, yeah. This year we weren't that profitable. It's going down. Well, you're out. Poof. You didn't get the results we were looking for. You're fired. Do you want to live in that world? Do you really want to live in a world where we don't give a damn about each other? You know, in my younger years, I did some traveling, and I went to what we call the developing world for the last 50 years, and used to be called the third world, used to be called poor, but you know, we have to dress it up, you know, and you go to, you know, and I also lived in New York City in some really slummy places. I lived in the tenements of New York. And tenements are tenements, whether they're in Brazil or they're in Manhattan. And, you know, what I experienced and what I felt was so painful. And when I went to the third world countries and I looked around and I saw the condition that so many people lived in, it made me sick. And I wondered how come these were tourist spots, until I discovered that all the tourists were in these hotels where they didn't see anybody. And they just went to the beach and played, you know, volleyball on the beach and were served and didn't have a clue as to what was going on, didn't want to see it. Why? Because we really don't like that kind of world. We don't feel good when the people around us are poor. And we don't feel good when we're the poor ones either. There's something in us that rebels against that. But you have to be trained not to look. I'm sure, I shouldn't say that I am sure, but I do feel this in my heart. I am sure that every child, the first time they see suffering, feels sick. The first time you ever saw a slum, the first time you saw people who didn't have enough food, the first time you saw that homeless person on the street, you felt, ugh. And if you are one of those people, you know, there is a kind of a despair can hang over you. But if you're not one of those people, there's a kind of despair that hangs over the whole situation, and then you go home and somebody, and one of those people is serving you. I was in Brazil, you know, in the 1970s, and the family had 4 full-time servants, and they weren't even that rich. But, you know, everybody else was so poor that labor was cheap at that time, and you could have that and not have very much money. I mean, relatively they were wealthy. And they were from they had a lot of social consciousness, and I talked to them about how do you feel about this, and they said there's no problem. They said our servants are happy. They don't have a problem. Now the servants are looking at me like this. They're giving me the look because I could speak, you know, Portuguese. And one of the women took me home to her house, and she lived in a slum in Brazil, and they call them favelas. And it was on a garbage dump. That's where she lived. This woman who was serving this really nice family lived on a garbage dump. There were so many insects, I couldn't even walk to her home because I was like bombarded with insects. I couldn't tolerate it. And I couldn't believe it. What I could not believe was how blind these really nice people were to the condition of the woman who was serving them food every day. And they were nice people. I'm sure they gave her a bonus every Christmas. But they didn't know. They didn't want to know. How many things do I not want to know? I mean, I don't want to know how that shoe became $7 or 50 cents. I don't want to know that. I can't take responsibility for the whole world. It's too painful. And so I go into my shell and pretend it doesn't exist. Some of us will take on a chunk of it and say, well, I can't fix the world, but I can do this. And that's great. It's better than doing nothing, isn't it? But what happens is we get so inward because we can't allow ourselves to feel anything because we would be tortured. And so we start shutting down and shutting down and shutting down and stop thinking about each other. I don't want to see how tired my father is when he gets home. When I was a little girl, my father had a nervous breakdown. He was physically ill. He wasn't well. My mother had to go to work to support the family. She didn't make much money. You know, we were poor. And every day, my father would call me, because I was sick all the time, so I was home. So he would call me and he said, did I get any orders? He was the salesman. Every day he would call in and ask me if he'd gotten any orders. And it just, I just felt like I can still feel the pain to this day. That he was hoping somebody had bought something so he could make a living. What do you do? What do you do with those feelings? Then he shuffled home at the end of the day, tired, exhausted. Not having made hardly anything, It's painful. So I either feel like overwhelmed emotionally, or I shut down and don't want to feel anything. Like he's not me. I am not that. He's a subspecies of humanity. I don't have to look. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to have to cut myself off. I want to live in a world that I feel good about. Don't you? I want to live in a universe where people are happy. Then I don't have to feel ashamed when I'm happy. The sickest people I've ever met have been very wealthy. They walk around in their own universe. They can't feel anything about anybody. They'll give a charity, but they're walking around trying to cut off their feelings about what is around them. Because they feel guilty. I don't want to feel guilty. I'd rather have less personally and feel more comfortable in my own skin and in my own world. What do I really need? Especially if I don't need something to compensate me for how terrible I feel. And I can't be happy in an unhappy world. Not only for all the reasons I've already given, but because we are one. What have we been saying since we began Consciousness Boot Camp? And for many of you, you've been saying this for years, even before CVC. We are one. You can't be suffering and me feel good. It's just impossible. I do my best. I don't want to get lost in it. I have some differentiation. We worked on that, Platform 2, differentiation. Just because you're in the sewer doesn't mean I have to be in the sewer. But the fact is we're in a collective that is in the sewer. We are living in a collective of extremely stressed out people. Now, I'm not talking about the third world here. I'm talking about the first world, if this is the first world. We are stressed. Everybody in it is stressed. Sometimes poorer people are more relaxed. but sometimes they're not. That's also another, fantasy is like, oh, it's simple life. Simple. The simple life of a farmer. All he has to do is worry about the weather, the locusts, the price of grain, the price of, how much rice is produced in China, and how that's going to impact him. Simple, very simple life. I don't know what a simple life is. I have never seen one. Everybody has this, and everybody has the same fears. I mean, oh yes, I used to comfort myself with the idea, well, there's a lot of flies in this country, but see, they're used to it. They don't get malaria. I mean, what nonsense is that? Of course they get malaria. People with rotten water get sick. But I don't want to think about that. But everybody is stressed. Everybody has stress. Plus, we have the nonsensical stress that we create, like, oh, I have a wrinkle. You know what I mean? We have this really important stresses. But that wrinkle is because, oh, then I'm not going to be loved, and and then I'm going to be thrown out, and it's my security, my safety, my safety. We live in a world of people who feel unsafe. We're always looking for the advantage to make ourselves feel safe. We've been talking about that. What about if we didn't have to do that? Supposing we actually trusted that there were other people in the world who gave a damn about the world. Wouldn't that make the world more safe? Wouldn't we feel safe? Sure, there's still going to be locusts, and sure, there's still going to be weather, and sure, there's still going to be things that we cannot control. But we could actually relax into the idea that the people around us care. And that we're all willing to ask one simple question. What is for the highest good of all, including me? And I mean my highest good, which isn't always feed my ego, feed my ego, feed my ego. So what is going to challenge me to grow as a person? That is what is for my highest good. That which is going to give me the resources I need to grow as a person. That's for my highest good. It's not enough to give people challenges. They need resources. You take the people who've had the most abuse and you say, you should lift yourself by your bootstraps. They don't have boots. Where are they going to get the straps from? You take people who have nothing, either on a material level or on an emotional level. You think that people who grow up in neighborhoods where there's gunshots going on in the afternoon are going to be more mentally well than you? That they're going to be able to cope better with stress than you are? I've had the privilege of working as a counselor with so many different kinds of people from so many different kinds of backgrounds. I'm just aghast. I have yet to find anybody who's had a good upbringing. And, people who grow up in wars, that there was bombings and fear. Our world is constantly at war somewhere. If it's not a famine, it's a drought, or it's a flood, or it's a war, or it's a Holocaust, or it's child abuse, or it's rape, or it's, our world is full of trauma. And we need more than challenges. We need resources to heal. So I didn't put in the book anything about what really is for our highest good except that it's for growth. But I want to say that what we need for growth is more than challenge. We need resources. Some people have a lot of inner resources. A lot of people don't. I can say, well, that's really too bad. But I'm living in that world, and I'm feeling that stress, and I'm feeling that pain. And the kid who is mocked by other kids and becomes desperate takes out the machine gun and kills the other kids. It's like you can't get away from it. Because the other point about mutual support is we are one, and it's just too damn bad about us if we don't want to admit it. Because that is the world we live in. So mutual support is not a dream, it is a necessity. You're going to have a baby. Do you want your baby to grow up in a world where there are other children who are in despair and are then going to rape that baby out of their own pain? How are you going to protect that child? Put her in an iron suit? Or try to heal the world that creates the conditions, that creates the problems that's going to hurt your child? You know, I want a man who is sensitive, knows how to express his feelings, is balanced, makes a good living, is good looking, and so on and so on. But let's just start with the sensitive, makes a, knows how to express his feelings. If you live in a culture where that doesn't exist, what's the likelihood that all the women who want that one guy are going to get him? During the Vietnam War, forget about what was happening in Vietnam. Right here, young men dying, all these women looking for men. Where were they all going to come from? I just was watching the numbers, thinking, okay, there's another dead one, there's another dead one, there's another dead one. Seemed like, what we used to complain about is they're either dead or gay. Not that I'm not against gay men. My point is that, you were feeling the pinch of the reality. Where were these men coming from? And I mean, imagine, like in World War II, the numbers of people who are wiped out. And you sit there and say, I'm going to manifest a great guy. Me. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who wasn't traumatized, and the guys who weren't dead came back from the war, and some of them wished they were dead. Traumatized generations, and we want our guy or our woman or our child to somehow not be impacted by any of this. And then we want to go to that beautiful tropical island. And we don't want to be impacted by what's going on there. We just want to have some kind of me too, by the way, I am that. Some little island of peace for ourselves. So, what's the deal? Well, don't we have to change? Don't we have to create a mutually supportive world? Do we have a choice if we want to feel any different? And supposing we had a tool as simple as, what is for the highest good of all, including me? And we actually used it in every situation. Later in our program, when we get to Platform 9, I'm going to give you a different way of looking at the same question, which is when we get to how can we most effectively unleash the power of the source on the planet. But right now, we're at the mutual support, and this is the tool that we have. And it works, because what it does is it allows us to become released from the ego, which has decided what's the right thing that's supposed to happen, and it's all about me. Well, I don't want to go to that restaurant because I don't like their food, or because I was there yesterday, or because, and I don't want it. Well, I don't want a thing, and I don't want a that, and I don't want a, and it's always okay. Well, we'll go to your restaurant today. Go to my restaurant tomorrow. Okay, so today we're going to go to the restaurant where you're allergic to the food, and then you're going to barf. And then tomorrow we can go to your restaurant, which I find, seedy, and and I found a mouse in the kitchen. You know what I mean? And there it is. That's what we do. And we end up resenting each other. I mean, let's get it down. We've been to the world. Now let's get back to the family. We resent each other. Okay, so you did the dishes, but you didn't do them right, and you still expect me to take out the trash. Resentment, 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 resentment. It's rife. Our world is rife with resentment because we don't have a way of coping with the simple question of what should we do about things as simple as where should we go for dinner, what should I wear today, up to what job should I get, to what career should I do, to who should I marry, what car should I buy, should I go to war, who should I vote for, should we invade Afghanistan? I don't remember a conversation where the Congress sat there and said, would it be for the highest good of all, including me, to invade Iraq? I don't recall that. There's no tools, guys. I see people coming into counseling who are at each other's throats because they don't know this simple tool. And then there are people who know the tool and won't use it. Isn't that even more absurd? Now I want to talk a little bit about the what about me from the other side, which is, oh no, that's all right. Oh no, that's okay. If you want to go to the restaurant where I'm going to get sick and barf, that's all right. You had a tough day. You deserve it. Anybody ever had someone like that in their life? Or have you ever been that one? Oh no, never. I have never been like that. No, I've never had him. What does that feel like? If you're the recipient of the sacrifice, it's really sickening. If you are the sacrificer, it's sick. Yeah. And then you walk around, and then you want to be rewarded for sacrificing. After all I've done for you, after all I've done for this family, I gave my life's blood. My God! Family! Family! Mom and Dad have sacrificed their whole lives for us. And now we have to sacrifice our whole lives for them. Oh yeah. If they had done what was for the highest good of all, including them to start with, there's no guilt. Because you're saying you did it because that was what you were called to do. I don't owe you anything. I need to ask what's for the highest good of all, including me, in this situation. Is it really right to do this? But this is the only way to get out of the guilt and the blackmail. And what about the lack of self-care? I speak about this quite substantially in Platform 4, about self-care versus self-interest and selfishness and all of that. We are so shamed for being selfish. I talked about this in Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. We want something for ourselves. It's normal. It's ego-based. It's instinctive. Me. Okay. So then we have to hide that because it's embarrassing. So we'd have to make the me look like something else. We have to figure out some way to manipulate to get our needs met without looking selfish, because nobody wants to be called selfish. Selfish. That's really selfish. Dagger goes through the heart. That was the word I could tell you from my whole childhood that I could hear reverberating. Every time my mother was downstairs playing mahjong, which was some kind of a game that she and her friends played from time to time, and I would hear my mother speaking, I noticed, now this is a sick admission on the part of your spiritual teacher here. If I was walking by and I heard my mother speaking and saying, I immediately knew it was me she was talking about, right? There were no other she's in her life, obviously. I was the only other female in my mother's life. She, and the word that I most dreaded was that I was going to hear, she is so selfish. And if she said she is so selfish, I knew it was me. Because I was selfish. I didn't know how to be any other way except to be self-sacrificing. And I felt deep shame. And so I had to try to cover that up and try not to be that way. And I didn't take care of myself. And I didn't realize what a drag that really is until I started to become a little bit more mature and realize that the people who don't care for themselves are the most obnoxious, selfish people there are. Because they end up depending on everybody else for everything because they've been so self-sacrificing. You now end up, you've lost 2 feet to diabetes. You've got, because you ate sugar all your life. And you're now crippled and you can't do anything, and then you make everybody feel guilty, and they gotta take care of you. And it's just like, because after all, if they don't take care of you, they're selfish. I've seen this, I've been this. I know that lack of self-care actually ends up creating burdens for other people. It's the same thing on an emotional or psychological level. If we don't take care of ourselves emotionally, we are nuts. And we impose that on everybody around us. So I have no time to think about my state of mind. I'm too busy taking care of my children. Then you come home, think you're fine, you're really nuts. Everybody around you is terrified of one of your moods, but you have been good. I have no money for counseling because my children need to play soccer and basketball and be in this and get that and go to summer camp. We have no money for couples counseling because our children need this and this and this, and we have to do this. They think they're being good parents. And what do the children suffer from? How crazy their parents are, how bad their relationship is, how much stress there is in the family. So the kid wants to go play soccer and be in Little League and everything, just so they can get out of the house and get away from their parents who are all stressed out because they don't take care of themselves, who are so busy making money so they can take care of their children. This is not mutual support. This is not selflessness. This is stupid. This is the ego taking over and saying, wow, you look like a really good parent because you're knocking yourself out, driving your kid around. You're good. You're not a good parent. You're an irresponsible parent because you're not taking care of yourself. I have done the same thing. I have been the, quote, leader of the community. I never knew how to take care of myself. I am that. I'm not talking about somebody else. Don't do it. What does that child really need? What is for the child's highest good? Now we come back to the question of the highest good of all. Isn't it amazing that when your parents are more relaxed and happy, everybody is more relaxed and happy? Amazing, isn't it? Why not put some resources into yourself if you're the parent? Why not trust that what your children really need is healthy parents? Almost everybody, when they reach a certain age, is ready to talk about the misery of their lives and how bad their parents were, except for those who pretend that their parents weren't bad. That's almost worse, who are completely deluded. But what they complain about is very rarely that I didn't get that extra pair of jeans. What they complain about is my father was drinking and distant. My mother was angry or withdrawn, or she didn't take care of herself, or so on and so on. That's what people talk about. That's what they remember, because that's what hurts. It's like a whole different vision of the world is the whole. The whole has to be well. The parents are part of the whole. I am part of the whole. It can't be for the highest good of all if it doesn't include me. It's impossible, because the whole includes me. If I'm not in the equation, it's the whole minus me. Then it's not the whole. It's an astonishingly simple thought, right? Yet in practice, is this easy to do? Because everything in us is pulling either to look really like we're saintly, so we've got to look like we care, or we really resent our children because they bug the hell out of us, so we're covering it up by being, devoted, or we really wanted to go back to work, but we didn't because we wanted to look like the devoted parent, and then we resent our children, and then we have to make them behave perfectly to justify the sacrifice we made by staying home with them when we really wanted to go do something else, or I really should have left your father 100 years ago, but I stayed in the marriage for you, and now how do you repay me? By being a drug addict? I mean, this is reality, isn't it? Let's look at how people really feel and see that very few people have their true needs met. Now that is an astonishing factoid. Very few people get their true needs met. That poor child who has no opportunities, cannot go to school, cannot develop, is not getting their true needs met, no matter how loving their parents are. And the rich child whose parents shuffle them off somewhere because they're too busy having their social life and have every external opportunity, their true needs are not getting met. And very few of the parents have their true needs met because everybody is involved in some game of who they think they should be or what they think they should have. Or I would like to see a world where everybody gets their true needs met. I would like to be so filled myself with a sense of well-being that I have something left in me to care about you. And I would like you to have enough of your true needs met so that you have something left to care about me. I would like to go to a job interview where I really believe that the interviewer is going to ask for divine guidance as to who to hire. And if I don't get the job, I can walk out and say, that's okay. I didn't get the job because it wasn't for my highest good. Because if it isn't for my highest good, it's not for your highest good. If it's not for your highest good, it isn't for mine. Because part of the tool that we use makes an assumption. And I admit this is an assumption. It's an assumption that I can back up with experience. But it's still more of a faith than anything else, because we don't live in that kind of world, that there is only one highest good. That is the highest good for everybody, because it has to include everybody. Because if it's for the highest good of all, then it includes everybody. So if it's right for me not to get this job, it's because there's something else I'm supposed to do. And that when that decision is made, I know that the employer didn't hire somebody because they're a relative and deny me the job that I really was supposed to have. Or because that employer is so scared they feel threatened by my gifts or intelligence. Or because the economy sucks so badly that they can't afford to pay what they need to pay for the right person. Or any of those other cockamamie reasons that we do things. And I want to talk for a moment about cockamamie reasons we do things. People do not, in the next talk I probably will go deeper into this of what people need to be doing, really need to be doing. But this is the introduction. But people very rarely do what is for their highest good because there are so many ego agendas that are driving them that they can't even stop and ask. Did you become a doctor for the right reason? Probably not. How many people are in the wrong profession or were in the wrong profession because their parents wanted them to do something, because it paid better? One example I think that I give in the book is, who's going to be wanting to clean houses, or if they have an option between, okay, you can clean houses or you can be a heart surgeon. one pays this much, the other pays that much. One has this amount of prestige, that has the other prestige. Yeah. Are you going to say, I really want to clean houses? I've met men who said, I really wanted to be a carpenter, but my father wanted me to be a lawyer. And I couldn't disappoint my dad, after all he did for me. Or it's in myself. I can't become a carpenter because it has no status. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to feel weak. I don't want other men, I don't want to walk into a room of other men who are all professionals and I'm going to sit there and say, well, I pump gas. What are these reasons? Look at the reasons. How many people are actually doing what they're suited to do? Much less what they love. How many people are doing what they're not suited to do? And when they are not suited to doing something, they don't do it very well. You don't want the heart surgeon who really has no gift for it, hates his work, and is drunk every night trying to deal with his nerves. And he comes in with shaky hands and he's going to cut you open. Oh yeah, that feels really safe. I don't want a guy who's driving a bus just because he couldn't get an education and he doesn't like driving buses and he's snorting cocaine and he's driving my bus. I mean, that's the world. We have people running for office who are completely ill-suited, who are doing it because they're ambitious, who are doing it for power, not to serve. I don't want my government led by people who are wanting to shine rather than govern, wanting to make money look good, seem powerful, rather than be of service to the people. But that's the world we live in to a great extent because people are driven to make choices based on wrong reasons. Because the world is so unequal. Because it's not a mutually supportive world. So there isn't support for people to go off and do things that might be right for them, but that carry no prestige or have very little income. You know, think about, what I'm saying is when you think about how daunting mutual support is, but then you start thinking about the consequences of not having it. The woman who is taking care of your airline ticket, who is miserable because her husband beats her and she can't get out of the relationship, or because she's alone and can't find love, or because her boss is telling them that they need to increase their productivity, and so she no longer has time to actually be of service. You go to the doctors, since the HMOs began to take over, you have 30 seconds. Tell me your problem and I'll fix it. You know, who hasn't experienced that? Haven't we all seen that? That's not a world that's based on mutual support for what is in the highest good. We're all being driven by something else. And that woman who's supposed to take care of our airline ticket is angry and doesn't have her inner resources to be able to want to help me, and doesn't relate and never learned how to relate, and thinks that I'm her enemy because I probably am. Because I'm saying, well, where's my? Oh, I hate myself when I find myself on these in the situations where people have been completely incompetent, which happens every day, right? It seems like every other bill I get is wrong. We're going through an escrow, and it's just amazing how not one piece of paper that has reached us has ever been right to start with. I have to go back over and over and over. It seems like things are more ridiculous now than they ever were, and we have all these machines to help us. People are stressed. People are pushed. People don't have time. People are overworking. People are not well. And that means that I have to spend 10 times more of my energy taking care of things that should come out right the first time. So I'm crabby. And I'm not making it safe for her. Because I'm giving her my anger instead of my compassion. Is that really for the highest good of all, including me? Wouldn't my highest good be better served by going towards people in a compassionate, caring way? Do I always have the resources to do that? I believe there is such a thing called the highest good of all. And sometimes it's something I don't like. And if I'm willing to give up my ego agenda and really go into the inquiry about what is for the highest good of all, I will find that it is for my highest good too. That's my assumption. And when I do that, and when we come together and ask the question, we have a foundation now for harmony and well-being that we didn't have before. It's as simple as that. It's a simple tool. I want to paint the wall green, you want to paint the wall blue. Who's going to get their way? Nobody. You ask, what is for the highest good of all? If it's green, it's not because I got my way. If it's blue, it's not because it's your way. It might end up that the answer is it's yellow. But whatever the answer is, it's not my way. My ego doesn't have to get all bent out of shape because you're getting your way. We suddenly have a way of dividing up our resources. Is it for the highest good of all for you to stay home and take care of the kids today? Or for me to do it? Or to hire somebody? Is it for the highest good of all, including me, to even try to get another job? Or to this or to that? And suddenly we have an objective view. It's like we move ourselves, and how do we do this? We move ourselves into a state of neutrality just by intending to do that. Does that mean that we will always succeed? Of course not. But the more we do it, the more easily we're able to. I go into a state of neutrality and I say, is it for the highest good of all, including me, to buy the shoes at $24 at that store or $7 at that store? And I have to ask myself that painful question. Which store do I want to support? Is the cheapest deal always the right deal? I have faced this by, should I buy online or should I buy locally? I want the local store to be there so that I can look at the thing. But I want to buy online because I want to pay the least amount of money. I mean, look at this. Don't we all face this? Is it for the highest good of all? I mean, I bought something and it cost me thousands of dollars more because I got that I was supposed to buy it from this store. It's like, oh. And I heard, it's God's money, Beth. Do it. You don't know why. You don't know when you pay a higher price to Mary rather than Joe that money isn't going to save the life of her child. You don't even know that. You don't even know why you have to do something sometimes. And you don't know that Mary's child isn't going to grow up and find a cure for cancer that will help your grandchild or great-grandchild that you'll never even meet. You don't know. It's a complicated world, isn't it? If we get out of the absurd idea that we know anything about what's going on in this world and that we have all of the answers, we can actually start to defer to an intelligence that is greater than ours. I would rather do that. I'd rather get burned deferring to a higher intelligence than guarantee a conflagration trying to run the world according to my view of what my own needs are. If I got everything that I had ever thought I wanted, I'd be miserable. The jobs that I really shouldn't have gotten. The men that I shouldn't have gotten. You know, maybe we need to be poor sometimes. Maybe we need to experience something. Maybe something is going to happen in that moment when we lose everything. Maybe that man was destined for someone else who we could really make happy. And he wasn't right for me because I wanted him for the wrong reason. Maybe I shouldn't get a promotion because it'll give me a nervous breakdown. How do I know? So many things we'll never know. So many things we find out only years later. Oh my goodness. So-and-so ended up being a child molester. And I wanted children. You know. You know, we're so scared. We're so at odds with each other. And we're so busy trying to make deals. Let's make a deal. Our relationships are about making deals with each other. Just bartering love, bartering services. If you do this, I'll do that. That's what our world is like. I want to be guided by something higher that I trust more. I would love to live in a world not dominated by human consciousness. How about that one? That's right. I don't want to be dominated by human consciousness, period. I don't want to be dominated by the limitations of human consciousness. I want to live in a world where we're all inspired. I'd like to believe that everyone can be inspired to care about the highest good. I just don't think there'd be as many wars. Do you? That's the world that I want to live in, and I have to start. So many of us are saying, well, I can't do that because other people don't. I can't go into the situation asking what's for the highest good of all when he won't, she won't, they won't. Well, they could say the same about me. At the stream, our community, we're trying. We're trying to do it with each other. It's clumsy. It's awkward. It's like, what a waste of time. Why don't you just do this? Isn't it obvious what the answer is? Yeah, obvious to you and your ego. You've already decided what the answer is. But we're trying. And you know, I'll tell you something. I am living in a world that I want to live in. Because I do trust that ultimately the people in this community will ask that question. And that's what makes me safe. I am not safe because there are no hurricanes. I am not safe because there is no cancer. You know, I am not safe because there is no old age. I am not safe because I have any money in the bank. I am safe because I am in a community of people who will ask that simple question. And that I also know that they're going to do everything they can to have self-care as well, to care about themselves, that they don't have to blackmail me later and make me feel guilty or any of those things. And that I'm going to trust that I live in a world where people want me to take care of myself. Not in the old self-centered way, but in the realization that I am part of the whole. And that's the world we're co-creating. If we can do it, anybody can do it. I'd like to challenge you to do it. Use the tool. It's in Platform 4. It's in the appendix under Tools. I go through a lot of explanation in this chapter about how to do it, how we go into that neutral place, what to do if you get different answers. You know, I mean, I actually we have a lot of experience using the tool that I've shared in the book. So now I would like the group that's here today to ask a very silly question. Would it be for the highest good of all, including me, if the world would adopt this tool?
Yes.
Yes. Well then, don't I have to? Thank you.